Hello, everyone. Welcome to Indie Game Arcade, a podcast all about indie games. And this episode, I am talking about Paradise Killer, one of my favorite indie games of all time. Definitely my favorite indie game soundtrack of all time. My name is Chris. I will be your host for this episode. Again, Joseph is out, and I am also out, but I have recorded this in the past for your future. So, let's get into Paradise Killer.
Game start!
Paradise Killer was released September 4th of 2020, developed by Kaizen Gameworks and published by Fellow Traveler. Kaizen Gameworks is also the group that just released Promise Mascot Agency, which is the reason I decided, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about Paradise Killer for an episode, because when am I going to get a chance to talk about one of my favorite indie games of all time and its relevancy than when they release a new game? So, real quick, for a basic description, Paradise Killer is a first-person, open-world detective game in a surreal, Vaporwave-inspired universe. You're playing as a character named Lady Love Dies, and if that sounds extremely weird, that's only like the beginning of the weirdness. Lady Love Dies is an exiled investigator who is like exiled to this place up in the clouds. And she is summoned to solve a mass murder on Paradise Island. There is a lot of nonlinear exploration. You can go all over the place, talk to whoever you want. It is a bit of a collectathon as well, with tons of things to collect, including more tracks for the soundtrack, which again is like my favorite soundtrack in a game ever. It has completely changed my Spotify algorithm and introduced me to genres of music I didn't know I needed in my life and become like a part of my personality, I think, at this point. Anyway, you are gathering evidence, interrogating suspects in any order that you want, and ultimately you present your case to a judge at the very end of the game, where tons of outcomes are possible. So to really explain the setting for this game, you gotta understand a little bit about the world and the strange lore that accompanies it that I am absolutely in love with. So this is gonna sound so weird. Throw all logic out the window real quick, okay? Put on your favorite Vaporwave tunes, get your lore hat on, because this is gonna be a bit of a wild one. So there is a group of beings that they're like immortal, essentially, and they're known as the Syndicate. Their goal is to resurrect these dead alien gods and eventually, through that, create a perfect society, free of crime, free of suffering, free of everything bad. So, whenever they try to create these paradises, they are like islands that they're creating, which are created in this kind of like pocket reality. These are these like artificial islands that don't necessarily adhere to reality, all right? Or at least the reality that we understand. Each time they have tried to create this perfect paradise island, is what they are called. This leads us all the way up to the 24th attempt. So we are on Paradise Island 24. This is the latest attempt that they have tried to make, and they know that this one is already failed. It's not working. The council has that like rules over this entire thing, that rules over the syndicate, that is in charge of creating the next island and moving everybody to it, is meeting to make sure that the next island, Paradise Island 25, is born and everything goes smoothly. However, somebody somehow gets into that council meeting and kills everybody. So it throws everything into absolute chaos. There is somebody who has been arrested who is a citizen and is not one of like the immortal syndicate members. And this person who has been arrested is accused of being possessed by a demon which is kind of like their justification of like, this is the why and how he was able to get in there and kill everybody. There's no way, someone that isn't part of the syndicate would have been able to pull this off. It had to have been this guy, Henry Division. So Lady Lovedice got in trouble for something a long time ago. She was like the best like investigator there was. But because of the thing that she did, which if you play the game, you'll find out more about it. And I don't want to talk about it because it plays a bit of a role into the plot of everything. She is summoned down to Paradise Island 24. They are desperate. They need her to come down and really investigate, how did Henry Division do this? Is he really the one that did it? Because there are doubts being thrown around. Some stuff isn't adding up. So you, as her, go in and you are investigating everything, everyone. And you as the investigator quickly are finding things are not adding up. So with that said, let me sort of break down a little bit of the kind of like the caste system within this world, which explains a little bit more about the setting for everything and a little bit more about like the motivations and what makes this so interesting. And this really has a lot to do with the lore of everything as well, which is what is so, appealing and interesting to me. So we talked about the syndicate, and that is probably like, that's the majority of the characters that you run into are syndicate members. These are like the immortal people. They all have very prominent like jobs within this world or prominent positions within the Paradise Island structures. So like there's Dr. Doomjazz, there's Crimson Acid, there's Grand Marshal Akiko, Grand Marshal Akiko 14 to be, technical. There are some of the surviving council members who were not at that meeting that kind of like assume control because of, the structure of things. There's like this weird sort of prophet kind of character called Witness to the End. So like, these are all almost like, think about them almost as like demigods. They look that way. They act and talk that way. So like, if you are thinking about something like the Greek pantheon of gods and some of the demigods and stuff within that, it's a little bit more akin to that. And especially in the idea that these are characters that have a lot of flaws to them. Like, these aren't omnipotent good beings. These are characters that all have a dark side to them. The more you talk to them, the more you talk to others, the more you investigate, the more you find out about all this stuff. And one of the things I love about this is the more you poke and prod, the more like the focus on any one particular person being kind of like a culprit begins to dissolve, and it feels like it starts to implicate almost everybody at some point. Like, the more you go, the wider this net gets. And it's fantastic. It's a great feeling as you go, and it just gets more and more interesting that way. So again, thinking about them is almost like demigods. They are immortal, but they're extremely flawed. Like, they are kind of corrupted as far as their personalities themselves, which is so interesting to think about, like, these corrupted kind of, bureaucratic people trying to create a flawless, perfect society when they themselves are like as far from flawless as you can get. The designs of them are also like fantastic. Like, there's a very anime mixed with mythological and noir design to all of these characters. And the illustrations for those are fantastic. And like, I'll talk about more about the design of the game itself in a minute, because like, it's vastly different than a lot of other games that I've played. And I love that about the game too, especially for as simplistic as the design can be. So the next thing I want to move on to is the citizens. Now, I talked about this a little bit. Henry Division is a citizen. So these are mortals. They are not like the Syndicate. And most of them are essentially kind of like sacrifices. They don't survive from one island to the next. And what happens is the Syndicate kidnaps people from the real world, like our world, to populate their islands. They live regular lives, like an NPC in a simulation, but they are ultimately sacrificed in rituals to help the Syndicate power up their projects to resurrect those dead alien gods that I spoke about. So if that isn't like right now sounding like you need a tinfoil hat instead of your lorehound hat, I don't know what to tell you, man. If I recall, really, the only one you really interact with is Henry Division. However, that does not mean in this game that is not the only citizen that is integral to the story. There's a lot of investigation stuff that you have to do. And really, the point of those citizens is kind of to show how morally bankrupt the Syndicate really is. And if you are thinking, wow, this sounds very metaphorical for a capitalistic system, you might be right on the money. So you wouldn't be wrong there. But that's not the last part of the caste system that I want to talk about. The last is the demons. So demons are not like the kind of demons that you would think about. It's not like a biblical thing. Demons are these like weird, somewhat malevolent beings. They're more like annoyances or like tricksters and stuff from outside of reality. If you can wrap your head around that idea, a being that exists outside of not just our own physical reality, but also this weird artificial reality that the Syndicate creates. They are usually just almost like corruption, like the embodiment of corruption itself, the idea of corruption. And they are usually the reason that paradise fails. It's their intervention with the citizens or possibly with Syndicate members themselves or some other means. This is the reason that paradise fails. Essentially, the Syndicate always does these, in addition to the rituals and everything they do to try to resurrect those gods, they also do stuff to try to make sure there are protections on each island to make sure the demons can't get there. Obviously, they got there. They can still get there. There's one demon in particular that you in this game run into all the time. This naked little fuzzball who is always flipping you the bird, named Shinji. God love this little guy. He is the greatest, and he's got such a good laugh. He's one of the best parts of this game, and you run into him very often, thankfully. So the gameplay mechanics, let's get into that. Like I said before, there is open world navigation. You're traversing the island freely, uncovering secrets, lots of collectibles, lots of hidden areas. To do all that stuff, that means there's also a lot of platforming, all done in first person. As you progress through the game and through the story, you can unlock abilities like a double jump and air dash to access locations and stuff that were previously unreachable. But you unlock those things through collecting of other things and earning upgrades and all kinds of good stuff. So there's like a lot of incentive to explore and to collect everything, because it's like the more you do collect, the better you are going to be at reaching more items, at exploring. So you are gathering evidence as well. You are talking to people, you're interrogating, kind of finding out their motives. You're learning secrets. You also have this personal computer assistant that helps you catalog all of your evidence, which is called Starlight. You're collecting case files on everybody. You can also use Starlight to hack into different systems. And with that, there's like a little bit of like environmental puzzle solving as well. Like you do have to manipulate a few things to be able to unlock certain areas that you wouldn't be able to get into without doing some of the puzzle solving and stuff. Like there's a specific thing at like the docks that you have to do with a crane and some barges and all kinds of stuff to find everything that you need. And then there is obviously the trial system, which is like the very, very end of the game. And it's kind of like you decide when you are ready to do the trial. And like, you don't have to talk to everybody to do this. And you don't have to get, the dialogue from every single person before you move on to the trial. It's really up to you to initiate that and present your findings to the judge, which is like this multi-faced entity that like oversees justice on the island. But you do have to present your arguments and your evidence, and they will like bring in each character and stuff, and you have to kind of like explain like how everything happened, who did what, who is really behind everything. And because of all that stuff, and there's various interpretations of like your evidence, you can get all kinds of different trials, and it's not going to tell you were wrong. Really, it's kind of like the trial outcome is the trial outcome. Whether you got to the bottom of everything or whether there's something that you missed, I mean, it's really just up to how well you investigated. Like, you might condemn someone that was actually innocent. That's a very possible outcome. And you're not going to know unless, like, you play the game again and do things differently. Or let's say you talk to a buddy or watch a Let's Play and see what they did and compare and contrast. There isn't a right or wrong way to do it, honestly. So I would say with that, there is a bit of replayability there. However, it's, to me, there's kind of like that idea of, I think the conversations and everything are only going to change so much. So like for myself, even though I say this is probably, no, I would say it is in my top 10 favorite indie games of all time. It's one where like I played it all the way through. I have not gone back yet, but I do want to go back. I'm waiting for like so much time to pass before I do it because I want to forget some of the secrets and things that I remember. And like I'm starting to get to that point already where there's like certain things I don't remember, how to do certain things, or like I don't remember who did what within like the actual case. And it's like once that happens, then I do want to hop back in because like the experience was so fun. And honestly, just exploring the world was a lot of the fun for me. The visuals are crazy and extremely weird. There's like a weird blend of like, I would say a retro sort of 3D kind of style, but with a lot of also like flat design too, like 2D within that, which makes sense for the idea that this is an artificial reality, so the idea of like really strange mixed dimensions, that it works. It really does work for this. Like all the characters are 2D, but like they will turn so that you're always seeing them, from either the front or the back, which I think is really, really interesting. But within a 3D space. And the 3D world itself is very much like a vaporwave kind of aesthetic. Neon colors, very surreal architecture, lots of like black and white checkered patterns in certain areas, big, overwhelming statues and stuff just randomly placed in different areas. Crazy. But man, that soundtrack. It is a mixture of what I would say is like funk, jazz, synth pop, and like Japanese city pop. If you are like familiar with that kind of genre, that is sort of what the game sounds like. And it opened a world for me as far as my music tastes go, and sort of became the thing I listened to the most. As soon as I started playing this game, that was like one of the big things that stood out, and I have not looked back since. One of the things that some folks are probably wondering is like, well, how good is the actual investigation, the story of this thing? Like, really, how deep does it go? And I will tell you, it goes extremely deep. It's extremely conspiracy heavy. Like, if you like noir kind of crime, if you like conspiracy kind of crime, if you like this sort of mob racketeering kind of thing, this obviously isn't like a mobster sort of thing, but the idea of that, of like not knowing how many people are involved in a crime and really having to dig deep and like find dirt on people that maybe you really like them as a character, or you want to like them as a character, but you find out certain things about them that make you question who they really are. Maybe you didn't really actually know them, and maybe this is all a facade, or like maybe they're being framed or something. This is that game. It's just wrapped in the weirdest possible wrapping ever. Obviously, I would recommend this. I think there are people that will be put off by the strangeness of it. If you can't get over the like sort of, I don't know, pseudo cosmic horror idea of the world, and that's kind of not your thing, then I could see some folks maybe not getting into it. But like, if you like mystery and you like the intrigue, like kind of that noir intrigue, as I was saying, this is a game that I don't see how you couldn't like it. I played it when it came out in 2020. I did a full Let's Play series on it. There's tons of videos on it. You can watch all of it on our YouTube. And like, I still think about this game probably like every couple weeks. There's just something that makes me think about it. The world building of it or the art style of it, something always is on my mind in relation to this game. And I don't see that changing at any point. And I think that if you, I'll say this, for those of you that have played the Danganronpa series, I think this is absolutely up your alley. This is 100% an indie game that you would enjoy. Check it out on Steam or wherever. Definitely support Kaizen Gameworks. It's a phenomenal game. And if you end up liking this, then check out their new game for sure, Promise Mascot Agency, which I talked about a week ago.
Combo!
Okay, now as promised, I said that I would talk about some hidden indie gems that have some similar commonalities with this game. Not necessarily weird cosmic entities creating realities outside of our own to resurrect dead alien gods, either in theme or like the art style or something. And I was like really trying to find games that were kind of off the beaten path a little bit. Some I think are, maybe there's one specifically that people might be a little bit more familiar with than the rest. And I'm going to say that for the end. But the first one I want to talk about is Umurangi Generation. This was developed by Aura Game Digital, which it's actually a solo developer, which is, I'm going to butcher his name, Naftali Faulkner, and published by Playism. So this is set in a dystopian version of New Zealand. You are a courier and photographer capturing life around you as the world is like quietly collapsing. So you are taking pictures and really just kind of like learning about this world. The environment is really telling the story about like climate disaster and what led to it, colonialism, and then the idea too, because you are young and you're surrounded by your friends and peers, but the idea of like how that is affecting the youth and like their determination or their exact opposite, their apathy towards what is happening. So it's really, really interesting. Like the art style is really what captures my eye. I think it looks amazing. Again, this is like a first-person photography sim, and you're basically, as far as like the gameplay mechanics, you're given bounties, and some of them are like more specific than others. Like you might get one that's just like photograph something red, and then you go and you got to find something red, you take the photo of it, and you do earn points and stuff based on like framing, zoom, composition, all that stuff. You get some photo editing tools, like obviously light tools after you take the shots. And there's also like a time mode as well that you can unlock after you beat the full game. But it's really interesting. Like I said, it's very visually appealing, real like kind of gritty, like Urban Decay kind of look, lots of graffiti. It reminds me a little bit in that way, like of if something like Jet Set Radio or Bomb Rush Cyberpunk went in a more dystopian way, like maybe it would look something like that, but still has some of those like Vaporwave kind of vibes, Y2K sort of feel. And then the soundtrack is also really good, like real heavy lo-fi, hip-hop, electronic kind of music and everything. So go ahead, check that out. That is Umurangi Generation. The next thing I want to talk about was Subserial Network. This was developed by Aether Interactive. This is set in this like retro kind of futuristic still society run by AI. There are no humans anymore. And you're playing as this government agent tracking down a rogue Subserial, which is kind of like a synthetic mind who wants a physical form. So you're investigating, I'm again, like going down that path of picking games that are extremely hard for me to describe. You're investigating like AI having an identity crisis essentially, and trying to become the thing that you've essentially, like AI itself has eradicated. Like these AIs are wanting to become human essentially because they want a physical form. So like the whole thing is presented in this like sort of computer desktop sort of format, kind of like, I was trying to think of the game that I played not that long ago that was like, was it S4U? Something like that? I can't remember the name of it anymore. Anyway, so you're like navigating emails, websites, directories, looking for clues. You're obviously talking to suspects, witnesses. There's like different dialogue trees, and it's really kind of an open-ended investigation. And you're discovering things through just like reading and like some logic puzzles and everything. Very, very like cool looking aesthetic, like lots of CRT, kind of like the fuzzy sort of look to it, which I really like. It's sort of monotone-ish in color scheme and everything, and it very much fits the idea. Sort of like a cyberpunk noir, but like still sort of archaic in a way, like an archaic sort of look of like early computer system in some forms, which is like makes no sense and sounds very contradictory when I say it out loud. But like if you go look up some photos of this or like some screenshots, I think you'll understand what I'm trying to say. That is Subserial Network. You won't find it on Steam. You're going to have to go to itch.io to find this one. So go check that out. Support that developer, Aether Interactive. And the last one I wanted to bring up is Hypnospace Outlaw. Now, I want to preface real quick. I have not played this one yet, but I own it, and I'm planning to eventually do a playthrough of this. It's been in my library since it came out. I'm very much looking forward to this. This was developed by Tindershoot, which I believe is a solo developer named Jay Tholen, published by No More Robots. And for a quick description, this takes place in an alternate history 1999 where people surf the internet in their sleep, and you are playing as an enforcer for Hypnospace. So you're basically policing the web for things like copyright infringement and harassment and things like that. So under the surface, you uncover corporate corruption, digital tragedy, and a decaying system. It's very much in the vein of like a parody of kind of like 90s internet. For those of you that were alive in the 90s and remember what the internet looked like back then, unfortunately, I am one of those that has plenty of memories of that because that was the time in which I was growing up. So in that way, from what I understand, it has a lot of commonalities with Subserial Network. You are going through kind of the internet here. You are investigating web pages, downloading tools, reading files, using like solving logic puzzles and trying to kind of like catch and uncover certain things within this game. But like what really drew me to this before I even knew anything about like the mechanics or the gameplay at all was the look. It's like the neon GIFs, the GeoCities looking layouts with some of this stuff, all the low res visual, and like it's again that kind of like Vaporwave meets the Y2K sort of era that just caught my attention immediately, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've only heard one other person that like I know of personally that has played it and they absolutely loved it. It has a lot of amazing reviews, so I'm very looking forward to getting into it. And I mean, obviously, like if you look at it, it definitely fits the theme of what I was trying to go for with this episode of that weird, doesn't quite make sense, but looks really cool and neon and vaporwave aesthetic as like Paradise Killer. And speaking of cool aesthetics, the only thing that could improve your aesthetic and make you cool is if you can do me a favor and share this podcast with someone who loves indie games. Yeah, I know that I'm reaching for a lot of these transitions, but guys, I'm trying. I try every week, twice a week now. It's very hard. You can catch me playing some of the games we discussed on the show, along with tons of other Let's Play content over at our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/nerdsloth. Like I said, I have a full series for Paradise Killer. You can catch the entire thing. If you're shy about pulling the trigger on purchasing that, go check out one of those videos, see if it looks like it's a game for you. You can also catch hundreds of hours of bonus content for $1 a month by subscribing to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/nerdsloth. You can also get a link to our Discord server, our merch store by going to either our website, nerdsloth.com, or our link tree, which is in like all of our social medias. In the case that our website is now gone, which I've talked about, we're going to get rid of it so we don't have to pay $200 a year because that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a tiny little studio of right now currently 2 people. You can also join our subreddit for Indie Game Arcade, help us post more reviews of indie games so more folks can find games that suit their playstyle and support indie developers. I wrote a review for Paradise Killer there a while ago, and if I remember right, Kaizen Gameworks actually commented on it, I believe. So if you don't want to go watch like Let's Play videos of that game, you can head over to our subreddit, which is just, r/Indie Game Arcade. Track down that review, read that. It is developer approved. So go check that out and see if that helps you get a feel for if it's a game that you want to play.
Game over.
That is game over for me. We should be back to our regular kind of episode next week with Joseph joining me. My name is Chris, and we'll continue on the next episode.
Continue.
Indie Game Arcade is recorded and produced by Sloth Creative. If you're looking for more gaming content, head over to youtube.com/nerdsloth. For additional podcasts, go to nerdsloth.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are multiple tiers available at patreon.com/nerdsloth, with hundreds of hours of bonus content from everything we do at Sloth Creative, including bonus gameplay videos of the games we talk about on the show. The theme music for the show is Retro Game Tapes by Audio Line. If you'd like to get in touch with us, or if you're an indie game developer and would like us to consider reviewing your game, send us an email to podcasts@nerdsloth.com with the subject line Indie Game Arcade.